$2.3 million wake-up call. That's the median home price in San Francisco right now. In San Jose, it's $1.8 million. Seattle? A cool $850,000. And for that money, you get the privilege of sitting in traffic, dodging human feces on sidewalks that cost more per square foot than actual homes in 47 other states, and pretending your 600 square foot cozy apartment with a shared laundry situation is somehow worth 40% of your take-home pay. But here's what the coastal elite won't tell you. There are 8 cities in America where your quality of life doesn't just survive on a reasonable budget, it actually improves. We're talking walkable downtowns, thriving food scenes, outdoor recreation that doesn't require a lottery system, and housing costs that won't make you question every life decision that led you here. These aren't struggling Rust Belt casualties or dying main streets desperately offering you $10,000 to move there. These are actual cities with actual economies, where people are building actual lives without selling their souls to afford a 2-bedroom. From a Tennessee town that installed gigabit internet before most of Silicon Valley had even heard of municipal broadband, to a Montana college town where you can afford to live near the mountains instead of just looking at them on your desktop wallpaper, to a South Dakota city with no state income tax and lower unemployment than anywhere on either coast. Each one represents a different escape route from the coastal housing trap, escalating from "I could explain this to my parents" to "I'm becoming someone new." The pattern is everywhere once you see it. Americans are hemorrhaging money for the idea of prestige, while actual quality of life crumbles around them. These 8 cities didn't get the memo that you're supposed to choose between affordability and actually enjoying your life. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in one of these cities already, or are you trapped in a market that's bleeding you dry? If you're tired of renting your own existence, hit that subscribe button. We're taking a road trip through the places where your money actually means something again. So here's the question: which version of you shows up in 5 years? The one still explaining to your landlord why rent is late, or the one who bought a house? Let's find out. Number 1, Missoula, Montana, the mountain town that still works. We're starting in Chattanooga, Tennessee, because it's the city that rewrote its own story and somehow beat Silicon Valley at its own game without anyone noticing. Here's the number that should make every tech hub squirm. Chattanooga installed municipal gigabit internet across the entire city in 2010. That's faster internet than most of San Francisco, delivered by the public utility company for about $70 a month. While Palo Alto was still arguing about net neutrality and Austin was becoming unaffordable, Chattanooga was already living in the future. The result? A tech startup scene that's quietly thriving, remote workers who can actually work remotely, and a cost of living that's 40% lower than Austin while offering comparable quality of life. Median home price sits around $310,000 according to Zillow data. That's what a parking space costs in San Francisco, roughly what you'd spend on a mediocre used Tesla, and half what you'd pay in Nashville just 2 hours west. The market's competitive but not predatory. Average days on market hover around 35 to 40 days, meaning homes move but you're not facing bidding wars that require family loans and tears. Rentals average $1,400 for a 2-bedroom, which is less than what a studio costs in Brooklyn and about the same as a monthly gym membership in Manhattan if you're being honest about how often you actually go. But here's what actually makes Chattanooga work. The outdoor access is legitimate. Rock City, Lookout Mountain, the Tennessee Riverwalk, and enough climbing, hiking, and kayaking to justify the REI that open downtown. The food scene has caught up too. Craft breweries, farm-to-table spots that aren't performative, a revitalized downtown that people actually use instead of just photograph. Fun fact, Chattanooga was so polluted in 1969 that it was named the dirtiest city in America by the EPA. Now it's a model for urban reinvention and environmental cleanup. If that's not a metaphor for what's possible when cities invest in infrastructure over prestige, I don't know what is. One local told us, "I moved here from Denver because I was tired of paying $2,200 a month to live an hour from the trails. Now I pay $1,300 and I'm 10 minutes from the river." The math works if you can get over telling people you live in Tennessee. The trade-off? You're in Tennessee. The summers are humid enough to make you question your life choices. We're talking 90 degrees with 75% humidity, the kind of weather where stepping outside feels like walking into a wet blanket. The politics lean red in the surrounding areas even if the city itself itself trends purple, and you're not going to impress anyone at a coastal dinner party by saying you live in Chattanooga. Picture this: 7 a.m. on a Saturday. You're on the Riverwalk with your coffee from Mean Mug, watching the mist lift off the Tennessee River, and your biggest decision is whether to hit the farmer's market or the climbing gym first. Your mortgage? $1,500 a month for a 3-bedroom house with a yard. Your Seattle friends pay that to park their cars. If you thought affordable cities meant giving up on quality of life, Chattanooga just shattered that assumption. But we're just getting started, because if Chattanooga surprised you with its tech infrastructure, wait until you see what the Midwest has been hiding. Number 2, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the tax advantage play. From Tennessee, we head north to Des Moines, Iowa, which is the city everyone dismisses until they actually look at the numbers. Then they get very, very quiet. Let's lead with the knockout punch. Des Moines has been named one of Forbes' best places for business multiple times, maintains a metro unemployment rate that typically sits below 3%, and has a median home price around $235,000. That's less than a down payment in most of California. Not a down payment on a nice house, a down payment on any house. For $235,000 in Des Moines, you get an actual house with a yard in a neighborhood with good schools, not a condemned Victorian or a meth lab with potential. Average days on market run about 30 to 45 days depending on the season, and rentals for a 2-bedroom apartment average $1,100 to $1,300. That's cheaper than a monthly car payment on a moderately nice SUV, and about what you'd spend on takeout in Manhattan if you ordered delivery 3 times a week. The economy isn't just surviving, it's actually functioning. Principal Financial, Nationwide, Wells Fargo all have major operations here, which means white-collar jobs that pay actual salaries. The insurance and financial services sectors anchor everything, and the metro area has been adding jobs consistently for the past decade. But here's where Des Moines breaks the stereotype. The culture isn't what you think. The Des Moines Art Center has a permanent collection that includes Grant Wood, Francis Bacon, and Georgia O'Keeffe. The downtown farmers market is one of the largest in the country, drawing over 25,000 people every Saturday from May through October. The food scene has graduated beyond farm feed into actual cuisine. Craft breweries, Vietnamese restaurants, elevated Midwestern cooking that doesn't apologize for itself. The school systems consistently rank in the top tier nationally. Des Moines Public Schools has a graduation rate above 85%, and the suburban districts like Johnston and Waukee push into the low 90s. Your kids can get an education that doesn't require a second mortgage or a legacy admission. A realtor told us off the record, "I get clients from Chicago and Minneapolis all the time. They think they're slumming it until they see what $250,000 actually buys here. Then they stop talking and start calculating. The trade-off is cultural cachet and weather. You're in Iowa. That means cornfields, winters that test your relationship with sunlight, and explaining to everyone you meet that no, you don't live on a farm. The weather operates on Midwest logic. Humid summers that make you appreciate air conditioning, winters that drop below zero and remind you that humans weren't meant to live here, and approximately 2 weeks of spring where everything is perfect before the mosquitoes arrive. And if you thought Chattanooga's humidity was oppressive, Des Moines winter said, hold my hot dish and watch this. But at least in Iowa, you can afford the heating bill. If Chattanooga was the city that rebuilt itself, Des Moines is the city that never needed to. It just kept quietly working while everyone else imploded. But if you thought the Midwest was done surprising you, wait until you see what's happening in South Carolina. Number 3, Spokane, Washington, the Pacific Northwest backdoor. We're heading southeast to Greenville, South Carolina, which markets itself as Mini Charleston and actually delivers on the promise without the tourist hordes, the traffic, or the price tag that makes you reconsider home ownership entirely. But let's flip the script on this one. Instead of leading with numbers, let's lead with what you actually get. Downtown Greenville centers around Falls Park, where the Reedy River actually falls through the middle of the city in a way that feels engineered for Instagram, but somehow predates social media by about a century. Main Street is walkable, lined with local restaurants and breweries, and actively used by residents instead of just being a tourist trap. The Liberty Bridge, a curved pedestrian suspension bridge, arcs over the falls and has become the city's signature landmark. On any given evening, you'll see families on blankets in the park, food trucks along the street, and a farmer's market that rivals anything in Charleston. Now here's what that lifestyle costs. Median home price hovers around $340,000 according to Redfin data. That's roughly 60% less than Charleston, half of what you'd pay in Austin for comparable quality of life, and about what you'd spend on a year's worth of artisanal coffee in Brooklyn if we're being honest about your habit. The market moves, average days on market run 25 to 35 days, but you're not facing the bidding wars that require family money and desperation. Rentals for a 2-bedroom apartment average $1,400 to $1,600, which is expensive for South Carolina, but laughable compared to any major metro. Greenville sits in the upstate region at the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, which means you get mountain views without the Colorado housing crisis. The economy is diversified in a way that surprises people. BMW has a massive manufacturing plant just outside the city employing over 11,000 people. Michelin North America is headquartered here, and GE has a major presence. That means white-collar jobs, blue-collar stability, and a tax environment that doesn't actively punish success. Fun fact, Greenville was named the best downtown in America by Livability in 2023, beating cities 10 times its size. The transformation happened in the past 20 years through intentional urban planning that prioritized walkability and public spaces over parking garages and suburban sprawl. The food scene is legitimately good. We're talking elevated southern cuisine, international restaurants that don't feel like they're trying too hard, and a brewery scene that's evolved beyond Copping, Colorado. One local summed it up: "I moved from Raleigh because I was tired of paying $1,800 for a 1-bedroom and sitting in Research Triangle traffic. Here I own a house, walk to restaurants, and haven't sat in real traffic in 2 years." The trade-off is pace, politics, and humidity. You're in the South, which means things move slower, people actually talk to strangers, and you're expected to engage with your community instead of just existing near it. The surrounding areas lean conservative even as the city itself trends more purple. Summers are oppressively humid. We're talking 95 degrees with 80% humidity, the kind of weather where you plan your day around air conditioning access. Okay, we're halfway through the countdown. Drop a comment and tell us, which city has surprised you the most so far? Are you Team Chattanooga's tech infrastructure, Team Des Moines' stealth affordability, or Team Greenville's southern charm? Let us know where you'd actually move. The dream didn't die in Greenville. It just slowed down, got humid, and became actually affordable. But if you thought Southern Charm was just marketing, wait until you see what happens when a college town actually grows up and gets a real economy. Number 4, Boise, Idaho, the Outdoor Addicts Base Camp. From South Carolina, we head north to Madison, Wisconsin, which sits on an isthmus between Lake Mendota and Lake Monona and refuses to be just a college town. Here's the stat that matters. Epic Systems, one of the largest healthcare software companies in the country, is headquartered in Madison and employs over 12,000 people. That's a tech sector that most coastal cities would sacrifice their farmers markets for. Operating in a place where a median home price of $385,000 gets you an actual house instead of a parking spot with plumbing. Yes, $385,000 is steep for the Midwest, but it's still 40% less than Seattle, roughly half of San Francisco's absurdity, and about what you'd spend on a new luxury sedan that depreciates 30% the second you drive it off the lot. The market is competitive. Average days on market run 20 to 30 days, because people have figured out that Madison offers quality of life that punches well above its price point. Rentals average $1,500 to $1,800 for a 2-bedroom, expensive for Wisconsin, but still cheaper than parking in Boston. The University of Wisconsin anchors the culture and economy, but this isn't just a town that empties out every summer. The tech jobs are real, the healthcare sector is substantial, and the state government provides employment stability. This is an actual city that happens to have a major university, not a college town pretending to be a city. But here's what makes Madison culturally distinct. It's legitimately progressive in a way that feels organic rather than performed. The farmers market on the Capitol Square every Saturday has been running since 1972 and draws over 20,000 people. That's not a cute boutique market. That's a cultural institution where you'll spend 2 hours sampling cheese, talking to farmers who actually grew the vegetables, and debating politics with strangers who expect you to have opinions. State Street connects the Capitol to the university and creates a walkable corridor that most American cities abandoned decades ago. The restaurant scene ranges from cheese curds, obviously, to elevated farm to table to international national cuisine that reflects an actual diverse population. The Arboretum has 1,200 acres of restored prairies and forests. In winter, people ice fish on the lakes, cross-country ski through the UW campus, and generally embrace the cold instead of just surviving it. And speaking of winter, if Greenville's humidity felt oppressive, Madison's winter is a 6-month commitment to darkness that makes Greenville look like amateur hour. Average January high is 27 degrees, average low is 11 degrees, and the sun sets around 4:30 p.m. Seasonal affective disorder isn't a myth here, it's a lifestyle accessory. You either buy a sad lamp and make peace with vitamin D supplements, or you break. A local told us, "I moved here from San Francisco for Epic, took a pay cut, bought a house, and my quality of life went up." That math doesn't work on paper, but it works in reality. The winter tests you, but the cheese curds help. The politics lean heavily blue in a red state, which creates its own tensions. The culture values community engagement and civic participation in ways that can feel exhausting if you're used to urban anonymity. People will know your name, ask about your day, and expect you to show up to things. It's either charming or suffocating depending on your personality. Here's your Saturday morning. You're biking the Capital City Trail, lakes on both sides, heading to the farmer's market where you'll spend 2 hours sampling cheese that costs less than a latte in San Francisco. Your rent is half what you paid in Chicago, and you haven't sat in traffic in months. Winter will come. Winter always comes. But right now, in this moment, Madison feels like the secret the Midwest has been keeping from the coasts. If Madison is the college town that grew up, Boise is the outdoor paradise that got discovered. Let's see if the discovery ruined it or just made it more expensive. Number 5, Madison, Wisconsin, the college town that grew up. We're heading west to Boise, Idaho, which is living proof that you can't keep secrets in the age of remote work and Reddit threads about affordable cities. Let's be honest up front, Boise got discovered hard. The median home price has climbed to around $475,000 according to Zillow. That's up nearly 60% from 5 years ago, as Californians and Seattleites fled their own housing crises and imported them to Idaho. The locals will let you know exactly how they feel about it, usually through bumper stickers that say things like "Don't California my Idaho." But here's the thing, even at $475,000, that's still 45% less than Seattle and 80% less than San Francisco. You're getting an actual house, probably with a yard, in a city where you can finish work at 5 p.m. and be on a trail by 5:20 p.m. That's not marketing, that's geography. Boise sits in the Treasure Valley with the Boise foothills literally in your backyard. The city maintains over 190 miles of trails within city limits. That's more than Denver, more than Portland, and accessible without a lottery system or a 90-minute drive. Bogus Basin Ski Resort is 45 minutes from downtown. The Boise River runs through the city with a greenbelt that connects the entire valley. There are over a dozen wineries within 30 minutes. This is the REI catalog come to life, and you can actually afford to live in it. The market has cooled from the pandemic frenzy, but it's still competitive. Average days on market run 35 to 50 days, depending on the neighborhood and season. Rentals average $1,600 to $1,900 for a 2-bedroom. That's expensive for Idaho, but still cheaper than parking in San Francisco, and about what you'd spend on a monthly subscription to every streaming service plus therapy. The economy is diversified enough to survive. Micron Technology employs over 5,000 people in semiconductor manufacturing. Albertsons is headquartered here, and the tech sector has been growing steadily. It's not just a remote work outpost, there are actual jobs here. A transplant from Seattle told us, "I sold my 900 square foot condo for $600,000, bought a 2,200 square foot house here for $450,000, and I'm on a trail every morning before work. The locals hate me, and I understand why. But the math works if you can get past the ego hit of leaving Seattle." The trade-off is cultural, political, and environmental. Boise itself leans purple to blue, but you're in Idaho, which means the surrounding areas lean deep red. The politics can feel jarring if you're coming from a coastal bubble. The growth has strained infrastructure, traffic has gotten worse, schools are overcrowded in popular districts, and housing costs have priced out the people who built the community you're moving into. The climate is high desert, hot, dry summers that hit 95 degrees plus regularly, cold winters that drop below freezing, but with less snow than you'd expect. The inversion layer traps pollution in winter, and the air quality can get genuinely bad when wildfire smoke rolls in during summer. Fun fact, Boise has the largest Basque population outside of Spain's Basque country, which explains the Basque block downtown with authentic Basque restaurants and a cultural center. It's a reminder that even cities getting discovered have deep histories that predate the latest migration wave. Early morning on a Tuesday in Boise, you're on the Ridge Trail watching the sunrise over the valley, city lights still glowing below, and you've got an hour before you need to log in for work. Your mortgage is half what your Portland friends pay, and you're actually using the outdoor gear that used to just decorate your apartment. The dream isn't dead, it just moved to Idaho, got more expensive than the locals wanted, and became a cautionary tale about what happens when everyone discovers the same secret at once. At least in Boise, you can still afford the outdoor gear to feel guilty about the gentrification. But if you thought the Mountain West was getting crowded, the Pacific Northwest has a backdoor that most people still don't know about. Number 6, Greenville, South Carolina, the Southern Charmer. We're heading to Spokane, Washington, which sits 4 hours east of Seattle and offers the cheat code to Pacific Northwest, living that nobody on the west side wants to admit exists. Here's the math that makes Spokane work. Median home price around $420,000. That's roughly half of Seattle, 70% less than anything in the Bay Area, and about what you'd spend on a fully loaded pickup truck that you'd immediately regret buying. Average days on market run 30 to 50 days, depending on season. Rentals average $1,300 to $1,700 for a 2-bedroom. The market moves, but you're not facing bidding wars that require tech salaries or family money. You're getting mountains, rivers, and 4 actual seasons. Riverfront Park runs through downtown along the Spokane River and includes Spokane Falls, which, unlike Seattle's theoretical natural features, you can actually access without fighting traffic for 2 hours. Mount Spokane is 45 minutes away for skiing and hiking. The Columbia Plateau wine country is an hour south with over 200 wineries. Coeur d'Alene and Lake Pend Oreille are an hour east. You're getting outdoor access that rivals Western Washington without the crowds, the cost, or the rain. The economy is stable but not dynamic. Healthcare, education, manufacturing, and enough white-collar work to sustain a middle class that can actually afford to live here. It's not Amazon headquarters. It's not Microsoft campus. It's just actual jobs that pay actual salaries that actually cover actual housing costs. Revolutionary, right? But here's what Spokane doesn't have. Seattle's job market, Seattle's food scene, Seattle's cultural depth, or Seattle's progressive politics. The economy is stable, but not booming. The food scene exists, but it's not winning national awards. The art scene is present, but limited, and the politics lean purple in the city, deep red in the surrounding areas. You're in Eastern Washington, which culturally has more in common with Idaho than Seattle. One realtor told us, "I get Seattle transplants constantly. They sell their $900,000 house, buy here for $400,000, and think they've won. Then they realize there's no Ethiopian food delivery. The nearest REI is in Coeur d'Alene, and their progressive politics make them outliers. Half of them love it and build actual community. Half of them move back within 2 years because they miss the Seattle bubble more than they thought." The climate is high desert, hot, dry summers that regularly hit 90 degrees plus, cold winters that drop below freezing with occasional snow. You get 260 days of sunshine annually, which is more than Seattle by about 100 days. But summer wildfire smoke has gotten worse, and the air quality can be legitimately hazardous from July through September. Think Boise's inversion layer, but with more fire. The isolation is real, but negotiable. You're close enough to Seattle for weekend trips if you need a culture fix, but far enough that you can't just escape when you're bored. You're choosing Spokane as a lifestyle, not as a stopover. Fun fact, Spokane hosted the 1974 World's Fair, the first environmentally themed World's Fair, which led to the creation of Riverfront Park and the revitalization of downtown. That same urban planning DNA still influences the city's development today, which is why it's actually walkable in ways most Western cities aren't. Saturday morning in Spokane, early fall, you're on the Centennial Trail along the Spokane River. Leaves turning yellow and orange, temperature a crisp 55 degrees. You've got coffee from a local roaster, you're passing kayakers and cyclists, and your mortgage is half what you paid in Seattle for a condo you could barely afford. The dream didn't die, it just moved east, got more affordable, and required you to give up the prestige of saying you live in Seattle. At least in Spokane, you can afford to visit Seattle whenever you miss the bubble, but if you thought the Pacific Northwest back door was the ultimate move, there's one more city that takes the commitment even further, and the rewards get serious. Number 7, Des Moines, Iowa, the stealth Midwest winner. From Spokane, we head to the Great Plains for Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which figured out how to leverage tax policy into actual economic growth without imploding, and nobody on the coast seems to have noticed. Let's lead with the headline: South Dakota has no state income tax. Zero. That's not a low rate or a special program. It's a structural absence of state income tax that means you keep more of what you earn. The state also has no corporate income tax and business-friendly regulations that have turned Sioux Falls into a financial services hub that nobody saw coming. Citibank, Wells Fargo, and First Premier Bank all have major operations here. That means white-collar jobs, actual career growth, and a cost of living that makes the math work in ways that seem almost illegal. Median home price sits around $295,000 according to Redfin data. That's less than what you'd spend on a year of therapy sessions in Manhattan to deal with the stress of living in Manhattan. The market is active. Average days on market run 30 to 45 days because word has gotten out that Sioux Falls offers economic opportunity without the soul-crushing housing costs. Rentals average $1,100 to $1,500 for a two-bedroom, which is cheap enough to actually save money while renting, a concept so foreign to coastal markets that it sounds like a scam. The unemployment rate typically runs below 3%, and the wages are competitive because employers are fighting over a limited talent pool. The lack of state income tax means your take-home pay goes further, and the overall tax burden is significantly lower than most states. You keep more of what you earn, and what you earn actually buys something meaningful instead of just covering rent. But here's what makes Sioux Falls work beyond the tax advantages. The city has actually invested in quality of life. Falls Park in downtown features the Big Sioux River cascading over pink quartzite. It's legitimately beautiful and maintained as an actual attraction instead of just a photo op. The sculpture walk rotates 70 plus sculptures through downtown annually. The Washington Pavilion houses performing arts and science exhibits. There's a legitimate local food scene, breweries that aren't just copying Colorado, and cultural events that draw people in. One financial advisor who relocated from Chicago told us, "I took a lateral move salary-wise, lost the state income tax burden, bought a house for $280,000 that would cost $800,000 in Chicago, and my stress level dropped 70%. My friends think I moved to a cornfield. I'm living in an actual city with actual amenities and actual savings." The trade-off is cultural, geographic, and climatic. You're in South Dakota. That means you're really off the map now. Friends and family will struggle to understand why you'd move there, and you'll spend years explaining that yes, there are actual cities in South Dakota with actual economies and actual culture. The winters are harsh. Average January high is 28 degrees, average low is 9 degrees, and the wind is constant and unforgiving. The prairie landscape is either peaceful or monotonous, depending on whether you find minimalism calming or existentially terrifying. And if you thought Madison's winter was a commitment, Sioux Falls said, "Hold my Midwest nice and watch this." Except unlike Madison, you're keeping an extra 5 to 7% of your income because there's no state income tax, which means you can actually afford the heating bill. The nearest major city is Omaha, 3 hours south, or Minneapolis, 4 hours northeast. You're committed to making Sioux Falls work because weekend escapes require planning. The culture leans conservative, and the small city vibe means people know each other and expect community engagement. You can't be anonymous here. Thursday evening in Sioux Falls, you're walking through Falls Park as the sun sets over the pink quartzite, listening to the water cascade and realizing you haven't thought about traffic or rent stress in months. Your mortgage is $1,500 for a house that would cost $750,000 in any coastal market. Your take-home pay is 6% higher because there's no state income tax. The winters will test you. The geographic isolation will test you. But the bank account and the stress levels suggest you made the right call. But if Sioux Falls is the tax advantage play, there's one more city that combines everything we've talked about: affordability, outdoor access, actual community, and economic stability in a package that requires the ultimate commitment. Let's see if you're ready. So here's the pattern we've been building. 8 cities where your money actually means something, where quality of life isn't a luxury reserved for tech executives and trust fund kids, and where the dream of home ownership hasn't been completely financialized into oblivion. From Chattanooga beating Silicon Valley at its own infrastructure game, to Des Moines quietly offering economic stability while everyone ignores it, to Greenville delivering Southern charm without the Charleston price tag, to Madison proving college towns can grow up, to Boise showing what happens when everyone everyone discovers the same secret, to Spokane operating as the Pacific Northwest's backdoor, to Sioux Falls leveraging tax policy into actual opportunity, to Missoula representing the last affordable mountain town. These cities prove that affordability and livability aren't mutually exclusive. The trade-offs are real: weather, isolation, cultural limitations, the existential challenge of choosing obscurity over prestige. But the alternative is paying $850,000 for a teardown in Seattle, or $2.3 million for a basic house in San Francisco, while your savings account remains theoretical and your stress levels require pharmaceutical intervention. The coastal housing crisis isn't an accident. It's a choice we've all been making by staying in places that don't value us beyond our ability to pay rent. These 8 cities are still choosing people over profit margins, still offering a version of the American dream that doesn't require family money or dual tech incomes. If this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe. We're documenting every escape route from the coastal trap while they still exist. Drop a comment with which city surprised you most and whether you'd actually make the move. Share this with someone who's drowning in rent and pretending they're building a life. The cities are still there, the deals are still possible, but the window is closing as remote work spreads the coastal crisis inland. Which version of you shows up in 5 years? The one still explaining to your landlord why rent is late, or the one who owns a house in a city nobody's heard of? Your call.